A homeless girl with mysterious visions saved a dying billionaire's daughter, but the man's cruel reaction almost destroyed everything. Stay until the end to discover how this incredible story truly ended. The freezing December wind cut through Manhattan like a blade, and I knew something extraordinary was about to happen. Kim pressed her small frame against the subway grate, feeling the warm air rise from below the concrete jungle. Her torn sneakers had holes that let the cold seep into her bones, but her eyes held something different, something that made people uncomfortable when they looked at her for too long on the street. She had been having the visions again, clearer this time, more urgent than ever before in her short life. The images flashed through her mind like scenes from a movie she had never watched, but somehow knew. A hospital room, white walls, beeping machines. A girl her age, lying motionless on a hospital bed. And then, the strangest part of all, her own hand reaching out to touch the dying girl's forehead. Kim didn't understand why these visions came to her, or why she was the one chosen to see them. But something deep inside her chest told her she had to act on them, no matter what happened. The vision had shown her the exact hospital, the exact floor, even the exact room number she needed. Mount Sinai Hospital stood like a fortress of glass and steel, just 12 blocks away from where she sat. Kim had never been inside a place that clean, that expensive, that far removed from her world. But the vision was pulling her there, like an invisible rope tied around her heart and soul. She stood up, brushing the dirt from her oversized jacket, and started walking toward her destiny. The automatic doors of Mount Sinai whooshed open as Kim approached, and she felt like entering another universe. The marble floors gleamed under bright fluorescent lights, and everything smelled like disinfectant and fresh flowers from the gift shop. Nurses in crisp white uniforms hurried past, their shoes squeaking softly against the polished floor beneath their feet. Kim's dirty appearance drew stares, but she moved with purpose, following the path her visions had shown her. She slipped past the reception desk while the staff was distracted by an ambulance arriving outside. The elevator carried her to the 7th floor, and her heart pounded harder with each passing second. Room 712. The number from her vision glowed softly on the door at the end of the hallway. Kim peered through the small window and saw exactly what she had seen in her mind. A girl about her own age lay unconscious, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed constantly. Tubes and wires connected her to devices that seemed to be keeping her alive artificially. The girl's face was pale as winter snow, and her breathing was so shallow it barely moved. Kim knew somehow that this girl was dying, and that she was the only one who could help. But what happened next would change both their lives in ways neither could have ever imagined. Kim pushed open the door and stepped into the sterile room, her heart racing with nervous energy. The girl on the bed looked peaceful, almost angelic, with long brown hair spread across the white pillow. Kim approached slowly, feeling the weight of destiny pressing down on her small shoulders like a mountain. She reached out with her dirty hand and gently touched the girl's forehead. Just like in the vision, the moment their skin made contact, Kim felt a surge of energy flow through her entire body. "You will wake up in 3 days," Kim whispered, her voice carrying a strange authority she didn't recognize. "The darkness will lift, and the light will call you back to this world we share together." As the words left her lips, Kim felt something shift in the room, like the air itself was changing. But before she could say anything else, heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway toward the room. The door burst open, and 2 security guards rushed in, followed by several police officers in uniform. "Get away from my daughter!" A man's voice boomed from the doorway, filled with rage and desperation. Kim turned to see a tall man in an expensive suit, his face red with anger and fear. This was Richard Blackstone, one of the most powerful businessmen in New York City, maybe even America. His daughter Emma had been in a coma for 2 weeks, and doctors had given up hope. and now this dirty street kid was touching her with hands that God knows where they had been. "Security! Get this filthy creature away from Emma right now!" Richard shouted, pointing at Kim with disgust. The guards grabbed Kim's arms, but she didn't resist, her mission already complete in her mind. "She will wake up," Kim said softly, looking directly into Richard's furious eyes without flinching. "In 3 days, she will open her eyes and tell you about the girl who brought her back." Richard's face twisted with contempt as he looked at this homeless child making ridiculous predictions about his daughter. "Get this disgusting little rat out of my sight before I call child services myself." The guards dragged Kim through the hallways as other patients and visitors stared in shocked silence. Richard followed them, his expensive shoes clicking against the floor with each angry step he took. "Throw her back on the street where she belongs," he commanded when they reached the main entrance. "And if I see her near my daughter again, I'll have her arrested for trespassing." The guards pushed Kim out into the cold December night, and the automatic doors sealed shut behind her. But as Kim walked away, she felt no sadness or anger about what had just happened to her. She knew what she had seen in her visions, and she knew the truth would reveal itself soon. Richard returned to Emma's room, his heart still pounding from the encounter with the strange homeless girl. He sat in the chair beside his daughter's bed and took her pale hand in his. "Don't worry, sweetheart," he whispered. "Daddy won't let anyone hurt you or disturb your rest again." But deep down, something about the girl's confident words bothered him more than he wanted to admit. The way she had spoken with such certainty, as if she knew something the doctors didn't know. Richard pushed those thoughts away and focused on the medical reports and business calls that demanded his attention. Day 1 passed slowly, with no change in Emma's condition, despite the girl's bizarre prediction about 3 days. Day 2 brought the same disappointing results from the medical team, monitoring Emma's vital signs constantly. Richard felt a mixture of relief and smugness that the homeless girl's prediction was clearly nonsense. But on the morning of the 3rd day, something extraordinary happened that defied all medical explanation. Emma's eyelids fluttered, and for the first time in weeks, she took a deep breath on her own. The machines started beeping differently, and nurses rushed into the room to check her vital signs immediately. "Mr. Blackstone," Dr. Martinez said, his voice filled with amazement and professional confusion, "Emma is waking up." Richard dropped his coffee cup, and it shattered on the floor, but he didn't even notice the mess. Emma's eyes opened slowly, like she was emerging from the deepest sleep of her entire young life. "Daddy?" she whispered, her voice weak but clear, the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. Richard grabbed her hand and squeezed it gently, tears streaming down his face for the first time in years. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. You're going to be okay now, I promise you that." Emma smiled weakly and looked around the room, her eyes adjusting to the bright hospital lights above. "Daddy, I had the strangest dream," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word she spoke. "There was this girl, maybe my age, with torn clothes and dirty hands, but the kindest eyes ever." Richard felt his blood turn cold as Emma continued describing her dream in perfect detail. "She took my hand and walked with me through this dark place, like a tunnel or something similar, and she kept telling me that I needed to come back, that people were waiting for me. She had this gentle voice, and she wasn't afraid of the darkness that surrounded us both. She led me toward this bright light, and then I woke up here with you, Daddy." Richard's hands started shaking as he realized Emma was describing the exact homeless girl from 3 days ago. The same girl he had called disgusting and filthy, the girl he had thrown back onto the streets, the girl who had somehow known exactly when Emma would wake up from her mysterious coma. Dr. Martinez ran every test possible, but there was no medical explanation for Emma's sudden recovery at all. Her brain activity was normal, her vital signs were strong, and she showed no lasting effects from the coma. "It's like she was never sick," Dr. Martinez told Richard privately. "This is medically impossible to explain fully." But Richard knew the explanation, and it filled him with a shame deeper than anything he had experienced. A homeless child with prophetic gifts had saved his daughter's life, and he had treated her like garbage. The girl who had performed a miracle was somewhere on the cold streets of New York right now, and Richard had no idea how to find her or if she would ever forgive his cruel behavior. But he knew he had to try, because his daughter's life had been saved by an angel he had rejected. That night, after Emma fell into a peaceful, natural sleep, Richard began his desperate search through the city. He started at the hospital and worked his way through every street, alley, and corner in the surrounding area. He checked subway stations, bus stops, and every place where homeless people might seek shelter from the cold. Night after night, he walked the streets of Manhattan, asking everyone he met about a young homeless girl. Most people ignored him or gave him suspicious looks, wondering why a rich man was looking for street kids. But Richard didn't care about appearances anymore. He only cared about finding Kim and making things right. He visited homeless shelters, talked to social workers, and even hired private investigators to help with the search. Weeks passed with no success, and Richard began to fear he would never find the girl who saved Emma. But he refused to give up, because he knew he owed her everything, including his daughter's precious life. The guilt was eating him alive, and he couldn't sleep knowing Kim was somewhere out there in the cold. Meanwhile, Kim continued her life on the streets, never expecting to see the angry man from the hospital again. She had done what her visions told her to do, and she felt at peace with her actions. The visions had stopped coming after that night, as if her purpose had been fulfilled completely and perfectly. Kim found shelter in an abandoned building with other homeless people who had become like family to her. They shared food, warmth, and stories, creating their own community in a world that had forgotten them. But Kim often wondered about the girl in the hospital room and whether she had truly awakened. She hoped Emma was healthy and happy, surrounded by people who loved her unconditionally and completely. One cold February morning, Kim was sitting outside a coffee shop, hoping someone would share their breakfast. The familiar black sedan pulled up to the curb, and Kim recognized the man who stepped out immediately. But this time, Richard Blackstone looked different. Humble, tired, and somehow smaller than before in every way. He approached Kim slowly, his expensive clothes wrinkled from weeks of searching the streets for her. "Please," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "please, don't run away from me again." Kim looked up at him with those same knowing eyes, but she didn't move from her spot. "I've been looking for you for 2 months, Richard continued, kneeling down on the dirty sidewalk beside her. "My daughter Emma woke up exactly 3 days after you touched her, just like you said she would. She told me about a girl who guided her back to life, and I knew it was you." Richard's voice broke as he spoke the words he had rehearsed 1,000 times in his mind. "I treated you horribly that night, and I'm deeply sorry for every cruel word I said to you. You saved my daughter's life, and I called you disgusting. I was wrong, completely and totally wrong about everything." Kim studied his face, seeing the genuine remorse and pain in his eyes for the first time ever. "I know you probably can't forgive me," Richard continued, tears streaming down his cheeks now freely. "But please, let me try to make this right. Let me help you the way you helped Emma." For a long moment Kim said nothing, just watched this powerful man humbled before her on the street. Finally, she spoke in that same gentle voice that had comforted Emma in her darkest hour of need. "I don't need your money or your guilt," she said simply, her words cutting through his heart like truth. "But Emma needed help, and I was able to give it to her. That's all that mattered to me." Richard felt his heart break and heal at the same time, understanding the pure love in Kim's actions. This child had no hatred for him despite his cruelty, only acceptance and wisdom beyond her years. "What can I do?" he asked desperately. How can I possibly repay what you've given to our family? Kim smiled for the first time since he had found her again on this cold city sidewalk. Help others like me, she said. There are kids on these streets who need what Emma needed. Not miracles, just someone to believe in them, to see their worth when others see only problems. Richard nodded, understanding flooding through him like warm light after a long, cold darkness had lifted. He had been searching for Kim to ease his own guilt, but she was teaching him something far more valuable. The gift she had given Emma wasn't just healing, it was unconditional love and unwavering faith in life. And now, Kim was offering him the chance to share that same gift with other forgotten children. "Will you help me?" Richard asked. "Will you show me how to see what you see in people?" Kim stood up and brushed the dirt from her worn jacket, just like she had that night at the hospital. "The children you need to help are right here on these streets," she said, pointing to the world around them. "Some have gifts like mine. Others just need someone to care about their dreams and their potential for greatness." Richard felt a purpose filling his heart that was stronger than any business deal he had ever made. Together, they walked down the street, the billionaire and the homeless prophet, ready to change lives together. Within months, Richard had established the Emma Foundation, dedicated to helping homeless children across the entire city. But it wasn't just about providing shelter and food. It was about recognizing the unique gifts each child possessed. Kim became his guide, helping him identify children who had special talents or abilities that society had overlooked completely. Some were artists who painted masterpieces on cardboard. Others were mathematicians who calculated in their heads while begging. Each child Kim introduced him to taught Richard something new about the hidden treasures living on city streets. The foundation grew rapidly, not just because of Richard's money, but because of Kim's wisdom and insight. She had a gift for seeing potential where others saw only problems, hope where others saw only despair. Emma recovered completely and became involved in the foundation, working alongside Kim to help other children find their paths. The two girls formed a bond that transcended their different backgrounds and life experiences entirely and completely. Emma often said that Kim had given her more than just her life back. She had given her purpose. And Richard learned that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you touched with love. The night Kim had first entered that hospital room, she'd been guided by visions she didn't fully understand. But now she realized those visions were showing her more than just Emma's healing. They were showing her a future. A future where forgotten children would be seen, valued, and given chances to shine their unique lights brightly. Years passed, and the Emma Foundation became a model for organizations worldwide, helping thousands of homeless children discover their gifts. But Kim never forgot where she came from or the lessons the streets had taught her about survival. She remained humble, wise, and connected to the community that had raised her in those early difficult years. The foundation built special centers where homeless children could develop their talents while receiving the support they needed to thrive. Music rooms for young composers, art studios for painters, computer labs for future programmers and technology innovators, libraries for storytellers, gardens for those who found peace in growing things, and quiet spaces for dreamers. Each center was designed around Kim's philosophy that every child had something valuable to contribute to the world. Richard often watched Kim work with the children and marveled at her ability to unlock their hidden potential so easily. She would spend hours with a single child, listening to their dreams and helping them believe those dreams were possible. The girl who had once been invisible to society had become the most visible advocate for forgotten children everywhere. Her story spread through social media, inspiring people across the globe to look for the prophets among their own homeless. But Kim remained focused on the work, not the fame, always reminding people that every child mattered equally and deserved love. The visions had stopped coming to her years ago, But Kim realized she no longer needed them to guide her. She had learned to see with her heart instead of her mind, and that vision was clearer than any prophecy. Emma graduated from high school and chose to study social work, inspired by Kim's dedication to helping others find their way. Richard's business empire continued to grow, but now it was powered by a different kind of success, the success of changed lives. He had learned from Kim that true power came from lifting others up, not from standing above them on pedestals. The homeless girl who had touched his daughter's forehead had touched his heart as well, transforming him completely from the inside out. And late at night, when Richard tucked Emma into bed, she would always ask him to tell the story again, the story of how a homeless prophet had saved her life and taught their family the true meaning of love. "Tell me about Kim, Daddy," Emma would say, her eyes bright with admiration for her unlikely savior and friend, and Richard would tell the story, never getting tired of remembering how grace had entered their lives through broken doors, how a child with nothing had given them everything, and how rejection had turned into redemption through forgiveness and understanding. The story of Kim reminded them every day that miracles often came disguised as problems we didn't want to face, and that sometimes the people we're quickest to dismiss are the ones carrying the answers we desperately need to hear. Kim's legacy lived not just in the foundation that bore Emma's name, but in every life that had been touched by her wisdom. In every homeless child who now had a chance to shine, in every adult who learned to see beyond appearances to hearts. The girl who had been thrown back onto the streets like garbage had become the cornerstone of a movement of love. Her prophecy about Emma had come true in 3 days, but her prophecy about hope would continue coming true forever. And in the quiet moments, Kim would sometimes touch her own forehead and remember that night in the hospital room. She would smile, knowing that the visions had led her exactly where she needed to go, to save not just Emma, but an entire family. The cold New York streets that had once been her prison had become her classroom, teaching her lessons no school could provide. Lessons about resilience, about seeing clearly when others were blinded by prejudice, about the power of unconditional love to heal. Kim had learned that prophecy wasn't about predicting the future. It was about having the courage to create it with faith. And every child who found hope through the Emma Foundation was proof that her prophecy was still unfolding, still changing lives. The girl who had once been invisible had made sure that no child would ever be invisible again in her city. Her touch had awakened more than just Emma from a coma. It had awakened an entire community to its responsibility for love. And as Kim looked out over the city that had once rejected her, she saw not just buildings and streets, but endless possibilities. Have you ever met someone whose life completely changed after an unexpected encounter with a stranger on the street corner? The foundation's success attracted national attention, and Kim was invited to speak at conferences across the entire United States and beyond. But she always insisted that Richard come with her, because she believed their story was stronger when told together completely. "We need each other," Kim would tell audiences, pointing to Richard standing beside her on the conference stage proudly. The rich man with resources and the poor girl with vision. Together, we can achieve what neither could alone. Richard would nod, remembering how his arrogance had almost cost him the greatest blessing his family had ever received from anyone. "Kim taught me that real power isn't about controlling people," he would tell the audiences during their joint presentations together. "It's about empowering them to discover the gifts they already carry inside their hearts and souls and minds." Their partnership became a model for cross-economic collaboration, inspiring similar programs in cities across America and internationally as well. Other wealthy individuals began seeking out Kim's guidance on how to effectively help homeless populations in their own communities everywhere. But Kim was careful to teach them the most important lesson she had learned from her own experiences on the streets. "You can't help someone you don't respect," she would say firmly, her voice carrying the authority of lived experience and hard-earned wisdom. "And you can't respect someone you do not take the time to truly know as a complete human being first." This philosophy became the cornerstone of the Emma Foundation's approach to helping homeless children discover their potential and develop their unique talents. Every volunteer, every donor, every staff member had to spend time actually living alongside the children they intended to help and serve. They had to eat with them, sleep in the shelters, walk the streets, and understand the daily challenges these kids faced. Only then were they allowed to work directly with the children, because Kim insisted authentic help required authentic understanding of the situation. This approach revolutionized how social services operated, not just in New York, but in cities around the world that adopted their methods. The Emma Foundation success rate was unprecedented. Over 90% of children helped went on to stable, productive, fulfilling adult lives. But more importantly, many of these children developed their own versions of Kim's gift for seeing potential in forgotten people everywhere. They became teachers, social workers, counselors, and advocates, carrying Kim's vision forward into the next generation of helpers and healers. Emma herself became one of the Foundation's most effective workers, using her experience of being saved to motivate her daily service. She had a special gift for working with children who had lost hope because she understood what it felt like. "I was dying too," she would tell them, holding their hands in the same gentle way Kim had held hers. "But someone believed I could come back to life, and now I believe the same thing about every single one of you." Richard watched his daughter bloom into a compassionate leader, and he knew Kim had given them more than healing that night. She had given them a new understanding of their purpose on Earth, a mission that would last for generations to come. The businesses Richard owned became models for ethical corporate responsibility, hiring homeless individuals and providing pathways to stable employment and housing. He discovered that many of these workers brought unique perspectives and problem-solving abilities that traditional employees often lacked in their approaches. Their experiences with survival had taught them creativity, resourcefulness, and determination that proved invaluable in business settings and corporate environments everywhere. "The streets are the best business school in the world," Richard would joke with his corporate colleagues during board meetings, but he was serious about the truth behind that statement. Homelessness had taught these individuals skills no MBA program could provide. Kim continued to work directly with the children, refusing offers to move into administrative roles or accept honorary positions and titles. "My place is with the kids," she would say simply, when asked about taking leadership positions in the growing organization. They need to see someone who understands their world, not someone who's moved away from it into comfortable offices. Her decision to stay, connected to the street-level work, kept the Foundation grounded in its original mission and authentic purpose completely. The visions had stopped coming to Kim years earlier, but she had developed new ways of seeing that were even more powerful. She could look at a homeless child and immediately understand what kind of support they needed to flourish and succeed in life. Some needed artistic supplies, others needed educational tutoring. Still others needed simply someone to listen to their dreams without judgment or criticism. Kim's intuitive understanding of each child's needs became legendary among social workers and child advocates throughout the region and beyond. Universities began studying her methods, trying to understand how she achieved such consistent success with seemingly impossible cases of neglected children. But Kim would always redirect the attention away from herself and back to the children who were doing the real work. "I don't perform miracles," she would tell researchers and academics who wanted to study her techniques and approaches extensively. I just help kids remember the miracles they already carry inside themselves, waiting to be discovered and shared with the world. This philosophy attracted spiritual leaders from various faiths who saw Kim's work as deeply sacred and divinely inspired in nature. But Kim remained focused on practical results rather than theological discussions about the source of her abilities and insights into human potential. "Faith without action is just wishful thinking," she would say when asked about the spiritual aspects of her work with children. And action without faith is just going through motions without any real hope for meaningful change or transformation. The balance between practical help and spiritual hope became the foundation's signature approach to helping homeless children discover their purpose and potential. Richard often reflected on how his life had been divided into two distinct chapters, before Kim and after Kim touched his family. The man who had called her disgusting seemed like a stranger to him now, someone he barely recognized as himself anymore. Kim had not only saved Emma's life, she had saved his soul from a lifetime of arrogance and missed opportunities. He had been wealthy in money, but poor in understanding, successful in business, but failing at humanity until she opened his eyes. Now, as he watched Kim work with the children day after day, he marveled at the consistency of her compassion. She never had bad days where she was impatient or unkind, never seemed to tire of listening to the same problems repeatedly. Every child received her full attention and care, as if they were the only person in the world who mattered to her. This consistency of love was perhaps Kim's greatest gift, not the prophecies or visions, but her unwavering dedication to caring. Richard tried to emulate this consistency in his own work with the foundation, but he often fell short of Kim's example. She would gently remind him that perfection wasn't the goal. Progress was, and every small step forward mattered tremendously to someone's life. "You don't have to be perfect," Kim told him during one of their planning meetings for expanding the foundation's programs. "You just have to be present, really present, when someone needs help and support from another human being who cares." This simple advice became Richard's guiding principle, not just in foundation work, but in all his relationships and business dealings everywhere. He learned to listen more carefully, to ask better questions, and to offer help without expecting anything in return from recipients. The transformation in Richard's character was so complete that his old business associates barely recognized the man he had become. Where once he had been ruthless and self-serving, now he was collaborative and generous with his time, resources, and attention to others. His companies became more profitable than ever because employees felt valued and inspired to do their best work for him. "When you treat people like they matter," Richard would tell other business leaders, "they'll move mountains to help you succeed too." This philosophy spread throughout his entire business network, creating a ripple effect of positive change in corporate culture and workplace relationships. But Richard knew that none of these changes would have happened without Kim's initial intervention in his daughter's hospital room that cold night. One homeless girl with dirty hands and a pure heart had transformed not just his family, but his entire approach to life. She had shown him that true success meant lifting others up, not climbing over them to reach higher positions and greater wealth. And every morning when Richard woke up, he thanked whatever force in the universe had sent Kim into their lives that night. The foundation continued to grow, now operating in 12 major cities across the United States and expanding internationally as well. But Kim insisted that each new location be personally supervised by someone who had lived on the streets themselves at some point. "You can't lead people out of a place you've never been," she would explain to potential program directors and staff members. This requirement ensured that the Foundation's programs remained authentic and effective, grounded in real experience rather than theoretical knowledge about homelessness. The children who graduated from the Foundation's programs became some of its most effective advocates and supporters throughout their adult lives. They would return regularly to share their success stories and encourage the next generation of homeless children to believe in possibilities. "If I can do it, you can do it," became the unofficial motto among Foundation alumni who visited current participants. These success stories created a culture of hope and possibility that permeated every aspect of the Foundation's daily operations and long-term planning. Kim would often sit in the back of the room during these sharing sessions, watching with quiet pride as former street children inspired current ones. She had learned that her greatest gift wasn't prophecy. It was the ability to help others recognize their own prophetic potential and purpose. Every child who discovered their talents, every adult who learned to see clearly, every family reunited. These were Kim's true predictions coming to pass, too. The prophecy she had whispered over Emma had been just the beginning of a much larger prophecy about human potential and transformation. Years turned into decades, and Kim's hair began showing silver threads, but her eyes remained as clear and knowing as ever. She had found her life's work in that hospital room, and she had never wavered from pursuing it with complete dedication. The Foundation had helped thousands of children, but Kim knew the work was never finished as long as children remained homeless and forgotten. Each new child who came to them was another chance to prove that every human being carried something valuable inside. And as Kim looked out over the city that had once rejected her, she saw not just buildings and streets, but endless possibilities. Possibilities for healing, for hope, for homeless children to discover that they too carried prophecies worth sharing with the world. The miracle had never been just about Emma waking up. It had been about everyone waking up to love. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone you judged harshly turned out to be exactly what you needed most? Share your story in the comments below, because we all need reminders that miracles often come disguised as problems.